that great effort that we had with you all on identifying data sets, identifying needs for faculty, county engagement specialists. So what we did after that 6 months review is we've been really in a very deep build for the past, I think, probably 8 months now. We've collected a lot of data internally. We're doing a lot of things that are going to be changing, and you'll be hearing them today. Where we're going is All Things Missouri is being talked about quite a bit around the state. As Marshall Stewart is doing these tours with all the different regions, All Things Missouri is one of the key slides that he puts out there. Folks have given us a lot of feedback, whether they're state legislators. Jamie, you got an email from a congressional office last week, and they're really liking what they see, because All Things Missouri goes deeper than any other type of application we have at CARES. It goes deeper around the data, it goes deeper around the tools, and most importantly, it goes deeper around the process and extension and what we want to build out over the coming years. So we're just getting off the ground now in terms of really being intentional on the tools and data that we're building out. I'll pause then, because toward the end of the presentation of the day, I'll just highlight some of the things on where we're going. With that, back to you, Chris.
Okay. So I was remiss earlier not introducing myself, and we're going to hold introductions now. Just go around the room, very briefly introduce yourself, your title, and which impact team you're associated with or think you're associated with. How's that? So my name is Chris Barnett. I'm the Assistant Director of CARES, the Center for Applied Research and Engagement Systems, University of Missouri Extension. I am also the Agriculture and Environment Impact Team Leader for CARES on All Things Missouri.
We have had some comments on the chat that Mike is coming out, so I guess we don't know exactly where the mics are for those folks on the phone. We're in a room that doesn't appear to have them, but just, I guess we could speak up.
They said they could hear Chris Barnett better, though,
okay.
So wherever you were was better than where Chris Fulcher was.
Guys on the phone,
Toward the ceiling.
what I said, never mind, because we're not going back. I think, Jamie, you're going to be recording it, and probably still won't pick it up. But just move forward.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
So, and I'm going to start with the impact team leaders from CARES, and then we'll go around the room. So, Michael.
Yeah, my name is Michael Hardy. I'm a senior research project analyst here at CARES, and I'm leading up the youth and family impact.
Angela Johnson, also with CARES, same title, and I'm the health and safety impact leader.
Jamie Kleinsorge. I'm a senior project coordinator and the business and community team leader.
Well, my next, I don't know anything about the impact teams. I'm a CARES web programmer, and I have been working on some of the front end stuff, but the impact stuff is out of my league so far.
Thank you, David. Which, by the way, we have a number of CARES people here that you may not be interfacing with, but this is a major effort, and it requires the work of many people that you don't actually see as impact team leads. So it's great that they're here as well, because they make all the sausage that's the reality that you have. So thanks, David.
Brent Carpenter, Extension Ag Commerce. I think I'm on the Ag and Environment team.
That's right. I'm on my
Rob Russell, Labor and Workforce Development Program, and I'm on the Business Community team.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chiquita Cheney. I am with NU Health Extension.
Hi, I'm Catherine Morgan. I'm also with NU Health Extension, and I'm on the Health and Safety team.
Andrew Zumwalt, Assistant Extension Professor, and I'm on Youth and Families.
Steve Ball, I'm a professor in nutrition and exercise physiology. I'm with Health and Safety.
I'm Emily Barbie. I'm a regional faculty member in nutrition and health with University of Missouri Extension, probably on the youth and family impact team.
Brad Anderson, I'm an assistant professor with HDFS and a state specialist with 4-H. It's all on youth. Yeah.
Justin Brown, I'm a GIS technician. Sam Tennant, I'm a project coordinator for Clearly. Chris Stevens, I'm a GIS. Tyler Gemmer, I am a database programmer.
Melissa DeBartolomeo, programmer analyst, user experience specialist.
I'm Dan Juanez. I'm on the CARES team as well.
And Mike Barbara, also a programmer with CARES.
And Terry, you get to be last.
I am Terry Phillips with the Missouri After School Network.
Well, thank you, everybody. And then the folks on the phone, I'm not sure, Jamie, what order to go through.
I can just read folks' names if that would be easier,
You
or
got them all muted right now?
yeah, everyone's muted.
Oh,
I'm afraid if we unmute everyone, it'll get kind of crazy.
Okay, if you can name
So,
them, eh?
sure.
People's names. Sorry, folks on the phone.
Charles Ellis, Darla Campbell, Elizabeth Smith, whoever HES Dean is.
That's
Jay
Jacqueline
Chisholm.
Benson.
Thank you. Jay Chisholm, John Fuller, Candace Fisher McLean, Katie Nooner, Linnell Phillips, I'm guessing, Wayne Pruitt, and that's it.
It looks like we're about, non-CARES people, anyway, about 50-50 on the phone versus in person. So we will be modifying the agenda just a little bit on that.
And just to underscore that we will speak right here where you can hear us best, and if we can avoid just
Actually,
walking
said
around.
Jamie was coming in the best so this.
Is that right?
Yeah, I know, right?
Speak toward Jamie.
Okay. Next, Jamie. So as you recall, one of the focuses for last fall was to talk about what information needs to be in All Things Missouri from the perspective of your particular impact areas. Because after all, one of the main purposes of All Things Missouri is a data visualization and access tool. So to that end, we now have about 29,000, almost 30,000 data sets available to you through All Things Missouri. And just since January, basically since we stopped having the last round of impact meetings, and you gave us this big data list that we put together with something we call our data Bible. And we're trying to acquire things that you guys provided to us on the list, although, to be honest, some of the things were rather vague, like more health data. But we've done our best to acquire things. Just since January, we've added 23 new data providers in All Things Missouri across 86 different databases. And these numbers are rounded off, but it's over 1,200 new data items and over 7,000 new map players. These are the new or updated map players where we're refreshing the data for the latest available information. So we've been quite active on the data side. Yes, Chris?
Yes, so just to underscore then that bottom row there is, in addition to the national secondary source data, these are all the state or the.
No, these
All
numbers are
Things
included
Missouri?
here. These numbers are included.
Okay, but there's kind of what we've acquired through All Things Missouri.
Since January 1.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. That includes national and All Things Missouri.
Well, I think that's important to note is there are a number of data sets people asked for that we didn't have in our system, and they were national source data sets anyway, so that was great. It benefits everybody across all states, but then we have the state-specific ones, so thank you.
So to give you a little
I
like,
want to speak over on this. Try speaking over in this corner.
Yeah.
I've had some issues with the sound. So.
okay. So to give folks a better idea then of what's going on here, a data provider is something like the Census Bureau. A data set is like one of the specific databases or data sets that the Census Bureau put out. A data item would be something like poverty for a particular year. And then the actual data layer would be the things you can map. So you can map poverty out by the county, the state, the tract, etc. So you can start breaking all these things down into to the finest resolution. You can get a lot of data layers, a lot of bang for the buck across just 23 new data sets for the past few months on this. Next slide, Jamie. Okay. Just to highlight a few of the data sets that you talked about or that we had identified across the impact team areas. A couple of things new in the ag environment area. We've incorporated a new National Commodity Crop Productivity Index, the 3.0 index that came out with just over the summer, as well as some of the ag census data. In health and safety, we've done quite a bit on opioids, and you'll see a little bit more about that later, as well as bringing in some of the preliminary vaccination data that was really brought up in the meetings there. For business and community, I want to point out that we brought in the tax districts that were released at the end of June this year, so we have information on those districts that the state has collected, as well as some of the components of population change, and gross domestic product by county was specifically requested by a couple of folks. So, and then finally, in youth and family, the fall injuries and hospitalization by age was an important thing we heard from you, as well as some of the child care facility locations have been incorporated and things like that. So these are just a scattering of examples across the impact areas or by impact area that we've worked on. It's really just meant to give you an idea, but certainly not exhaustive. You see, that's much less than 7,000 data layers. So,
Are there any questions? Because you guys gave us input on the data sets. Any quick reactions in terms of the buckets that Chris framed? Are we on the mark? Are we off the mark? Are we addressing what you asked him?
Next slide, Jamie. So, in addition to the data layers, you've got to have something to do with that information. We've opened up a few more tools and resources, and we have a number of them in the works as well. And you see on here, we've added a couple of different data sets, or a couple of different tools. Building regional resilience tool that is really built on data and work that we did with was it IPP, right? Yes. A few years ago. The Ag Opportunities tool in Missouri, worked with Joe Parcell and group there, Joe Moreland. There is a change to our District Explorer tool where we've, am I shaking or is this shaking? All right. The District Explorer tool where we've added the Regional Planning Commission areas. And we do have a food assessment tool. And the reason to mention that is a tool that right now is not publicly accessible, but we want to let you know that that is a tool that's available on the site for food assessment that we can provide special access to extension on a one-by-one basis right now. And as we get into our discussion of where things are headed with All Things Missouri, I think you'll see how we're going to provide self-access to that as we move forward. And finally, I wanted to bring up that we do have a new training set available for how you would do a community assessment that we are going to be offering up, or already doing, right? Mm-hmm. We've done it a couple of times now. Four times. You guys are way ahead of me. We've done it 4 times now to various folks. That is a new training that's available as a resource related to All Things Missouri.
Jamie, is that training just internally right now still, or is that community people go to that? Or?
Community people can go to it. So we just did one last week in Montgomery City, and we actually had 2 folks from Lincoln County Fire District come because they're looking to do a safety assessment in their community. So yeah, it is open up to community members. Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize we could promote it outside.
Yep.
So,
yep.
Good.
Oh yeah, so in addition to the CNA or the Community Needs Assessment training, Sam and I are working on developing a training series. So we'll do some webinars, just some general overview webinars, and then some dives into some of those different tools and data sets. So we'll have that calendar. We'll have a calendar available on All Things Missouri, so you can sort of see what's next and what's upcoming starting in January. Yep.
So this is an example of one of the new tools and resources. We didn't list them all there. This is one that we didn't list on the last slide. This is the Rural Opioid Response Tool. It's part of the RCORP program. Yeah. And the data hub that we're building out for them, and we linked that up to All Things Missouri. So you can dive in from the All Things Missouri platform into the data hub and find things. There's a reporting tool where you can bring up your work, things like workforce risk factors and mortality, things related to opioids, as well as mapping tools, resource collections, and some. They actually have some custom group spaces over there that they're working with, and it's an example of where we may be. Yeah.
So just to talk a little bit more about this, so the RCORP site is around opioids. It's kind of a data repository, again, to help these grantees. So there are a number of grantees across the state who have received either planning or implementation grants to do opioid response work. But they were struggling with data and kind of duplicating efforts related to data acquisition. So the hub helps them with that. But it is publicly available. You can run a report for any Missouri county. It's pre-aggregated for these health center regions, but you can, just like you can with the All Things Missouri reporting tool, go in and select 1 or more counties and generate that same data that these grantees are using. So if there's anyone in your county who's doing opioid work or assessments or looking for
So here's another exciting new area that we've been working on behind the scenes for a little while now. as you know, All Things Missouri, we have a lot of data in there, and we have some tools that help expose that data. But for the general public, and even for some of your target audiences, such as county commissioners or legislators or things like that, maybe they're not not comfortable getting in and working directly with the data like that. They need to have the data presented to them. And to that end, we've been working on something on what's called story maps. In other words, how to use the data and tools within the system to help you tell a story around a particular topic that you want to convey to your target audience. And right now, the data-driven stories, they can affect change, influence opinion, create awareness. They're a great way to describe big ideas. And you can bring in static pictures, maps, etc. You can also bring in interactive maps and other tools that can be activated from right there in the story map. I don't know if you're familiar, probably you've seen a number of these things in newspaper sites like New York Times or other county and state agencies are putting up a number of story maps to help them tell their stories. We're willing to bring that type of technology to Extension to let you have that. And so we're going to show a couple of quick examples. We're still under development with these things, and we're thinking that by the end of the month we'll be able to put up some story maps that we had developed as CARES that we think hit a few topics here in Missouri. But the way this has really got to work is that the story maps have to come from you and the concepts from you, and you would work maybe with somebody at CARES to put together the tools and the data and the story to present a particular topic out across to your audience. So we're viewing this as a real opportunity for teaming up with you as the knowledge persons, the content experts, with some of the technology and expertise to tell your story. So this is a story map about the 2019 flood, and just shows you how we can interact with the data a little bit. If you scroll down, Jamie, to the next one, you see it brings up the theme of flood maps for the state of Missouri, and if you type in a location on the map, a city or no E in Boonville, by the way.
Oh, goodness. My Illinoisness is showing. Oh, there we go.
Real stuff.
No.
Sorry.
And now there's too many L's.
There you go. You quickly type in the city and jump to a location on the map, or even a particular address. If you want to type your home address, you can see where that is on the map and pull up this information from FEMA and interact with it. You click on the map, it brings you up information about that particular flooding area, theoretically, and or maybe not, Jamie. And then you can see what's going on in your particular area. If you scroll down, you see we've aggregated a number of different data sets there. Here's FEMA disasters, going down. Here's the natural soil properties that would indicate that this is a floodable area across the whole state. 1993 flood, etc. Well, the next one's kind of interesting. The flood gauges. This is actually tying into live data here that theoretically should show up. Yes, this is gauges in flood state right now as of today. The data that we have in that. So it can kind of integrate across the system to that. Let me show you the other example, and I see a couple of questions. This is another type of story map together. It's got tabs across the top rather than scrolling down. This is talking about population change in Missouri. Here you get kind of a base for, where's the population distribution in the state. And then if you go to the second tab, we can get an idea of population change. And here you see, you zoom out a little bit more, you see which counties have change and don't have change. And is it going to work? Did it sit there too long? Okay. Sorry, we had all this preloaded and it sat there too long, I guess. Okay, now I go to tab 2. This shows the natural population change. What's neat about this is it ties in addition to the maps, some interactive graphics and things. Okay, there we go.
Whenever
As
you
say,
have
we're
Zoom,
still working on this.
Whenever you have Zoom up and running and recording and all that, it takes bandwidth.
Oh, maybe so. I don't know. So you'll see here we've got change across Missouri. You zoom into 2, 3, 4 counties. You'll see this chart across the bottom changes to update which counties you're seeing on the map. You can hover over and see the different components of population change, births, death, migration. And you'll see the graphs on the right-hand side change with what you're in. So you see a total population change. Now, this is just a nice sort of basic example of this. If you think of applications in your particular area, you can see how you can tie in little feeds that would change as people actually use it for their topic area, or journalistic type stories that you scroll through, or various other interactions you can have in this. And you can tie back to your extension sites on Nexus and things like that through here, and expose other stories and data. So that's all that can be integrated in the story map. So any questions on that? I saw some confused looks out here.
Okay, I got a far out question. It's probably is not asked. John Gulick with University Extension in Osage County. So I love to see what you're right there. So we've got a couple projects right now where we're having students. And they've just reached out to Extension, and I'm thinking, man, if the students were aware, I don't know how much of this information is actually going to the academic programs. But we also have S&T is actually doing some projects. So again, throughout the entire system, I'm thinking they have engineering classes that are coming to work in our county too.
Wow.
This would be great stuff
to
them to be aware. Rather than me trying to, I'll definitely make them aware of it. And I think it's going to be user-friendly enough that they're probably a lot smarter about it than I am. So, but I'm thinking this would be great stuff, especially as we move forward, that especially certain classes that have outreach and doing stuff that they're.
So if I could respond to the UM system and the different universities, we're building on something called the engagement portals now, and that's going to be tied into All Things Missouri. So right now we have different products that we're putting out there. But it really just makes sense is how we dovetail all this work with All Things Missouri as Marshall Stewart goes out there, really talks about all things. During the summit week, our team is going to be at each university launching or talking about All Things Missouri and its capability. What we found out from this needs assessment is how much faculty really need access to data and to stories and to what we have at CARES, but very few people are aware of what we do institutionally. So your question's really, really right on. In terms of engaging students, I think we'll go into a little bit around how students can actually work with this.
Now, I'm going to be telling my students that, or not my students that are trying to help us. I'm definitely going to. I've already seen 3 applications just what you already showed.
Well, that's great. Well, most of these applications are available on All Things Missouri right now, but these story maps won't be up until about the end of the month, is what we're going to say right now. On that, but we can send out a push. We can push out a notice to you guys whenever there's available, so you know. How's that?
I think the story maps are critical because many people, we get into too much abstraction with mapping and internet mapping. People don't get that, but if we blend it with the narrative and with dashboards, this is the sweet spot in terms of how extension and faculty, engaged faculty, can really meet external stakeholders. So. Underlying this kind of infrastructure is really a geeky, techie thing, hands off to the CARES gang back there, is because it's providing the platform for telling our story better. And that's where we're at just now.
Yes, and I really want to reemphasize something I said earlier that I think you're pointing out here, is the story map is just that. It's a story and a map. And in our process of working up these 4 or 5 story maps, we've learned that maybe we're not the best at telling stories. And would really appreciate input from how to tell this story, especially from the perspective of the folks that you are interacting with on a daily basis. Another thing that you can do with these story maps is this is something that can be pointed out to like a newspaper or any kind of media team as a resource that they can get in and learn something about a topic that you've got. So you're looking at a real communications tool here and the potential for that, right? So we'll move on here. One of the other things that we're talking about, and we've been talking with a couple of groups already on this, is our topic area pages. This is a page that right now we're thinking this will be dedicated to each one of the 4 impact teams, but we also see that this could be subdivided out into subtopics for each one of those teams. And this will replace the things that you saw at the bottom that front page of All Things Missouri, where we said these are sort of impact areas. We have links to stories, and they're very good, and some of that content will be integrated into these. But we're thinking this will be replacing a more robust and dynamic page that you can talk about, something a little more live that you're more in control of, evidence of where your progress is being made, what work's being done, your partners, and what are we doing here in Missouri. We're seeing that it could tie in links to stories on Nexus or wherever, and it could tie in, you've got a story map up there in the corner, you can tie that into this page, other resources that you know of, links out, etc. That this page will be used to convey this, and it's really meant to tell the story around your particular impact team. For the folks that have been early discussions on this, have I hit the mark on that? Well, you're saying that? Yeah? Jamie? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And,
Oh, yeah.
Okay. On to mobile data collection. Chris, did you want to jump in and say a couple things, big picture about mobile data collection before we?
Sure.
Okay.
And the speaker volume, the speaker input is passed over by Jamie. So.
Okay, thank you. So what I wanted to just highly talk through is this mobile data collection tool. It's something we've been thinking about for years at CARES around primary data collection, because often secondary data, whether it's state level or national level, isn't good enough. So this mobile data collection tool is something we're going to be launching at the summit, but you guys get to play around with it. Chris will go into the details in terms of an example here. The idea is to be able to use your smartphone, whether you're online, have access to the internet, or down the road if it's just an app so you can store data. This is important for field faculty who are trying to record something around food access or food pantry locations, etc., as examples. What we're going to be doing is taking this mobile data collection tool that we use at the summit just as a proof of concept of what we can do down the road. Chris, did you want to start with what it is with broadband, and then we can loop back?
Let me just say a couple more things about the general concept. Is that this will be using your mobile device as your data input and feeding your database from that. It can, there's various ways of using this. You can automatically detect your location wherever you're standing on that mobile device and answer a couple of questions. There's a data point. Or we can have it where it can be location independent. Say if you want to answer questions about the 3 counties you're in charge of, you can tell it, well, this is for this county, this is for this county, and it'll still integrate the information into the larger database. The big idea behind this is that it can support co-creation of data. So you mentioned students. Students can be around the state or wherever they're out in the field collecting information. They can all be uploading information simultaneously into a single database that would be automatically updated and redisplayed in real time there as the information is collected. So it's a really nice tool for something like that. So as Chris said, we're going to wake you up here. And for the folks on the phone too. You see, for the folks that brought your smartphones, if you could pull them out, you see a URL up here on the screen.
By the way, this is just a test case. We're launching it for the first time with you all. This is just part one of a 2-step process. But once you do this and you enter in your survey results, we'll explain what's going to happen at this summit, okay?
Yes, so if you go to the URL listed there, allthingsmissouri.org/internet-survey. Maybe we can come up with a better URL in the future. What this is going to do is be the first part of a test for the system. It's going to ask you 3 questions about your home internet and how things are going with you at home. And be brutally honest about your home. Unfortunately, we're not able to tie it to maps just yet today. That's part of our situation we're getting resolved by the end of the month. But we will collect this information and send back out a map at the end, right, Michael, of the responses, or I look at Michael.
Yes.
Somebody, maybe it's the end, but somebody's going to send out a map at the end. What the results are, I think it's mainly going to be Boone County results in this case. But, we'll see some of that.
Let's give them a couple minutes.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll give you a couple minutes to fill this survey out, and then we'll tell you why this is important. So when you're done, just kind of raise your hand briefly so we get a sense of how long. Thank you, Chiquita, you won. You can. Okay, good. More hands went up. Good. Simple survey. And also, if you're having problems, let us know. If
Yeah.
something's glitching or not working right, it's important to, good, okay.
You knew we were going to put you to work, right?
And for the folks online, yeah, go ahead and do the same thing. Thank you.
Curious folks can do this too back there. Well, you guys aren't as fast as all the extension folks, but sorry, Mike. Okay.
You good? I think inside here, everyone pretty much raised their hand, so we'll go ahead and.
So what has happened here?
So what happened here? Now, any issues at all with the thing? Was it fairly intuitive, just kind of asking simple questions? What we need at the summit is something really low-hanging, a simple response, because what we're going to have is this is a distributed data entry tool. It's for field faculty, county engagement specialists, students, other folks. We can build out other types of questions. This is just for the broadband survey that is part of the summit week. What's going to happen is as you enter in your responses, they're going to come up on a large wall map of the state of Missouri, showing all the zip codes and all the counties and how you're responding to that. So it's really important as we think about feedback loops. A lot of folks who have reporting systems that you report into something and you never see the light of day, right? It's kind of
just like you just did. But
you never see what you put in, and I thank you, Chris. But what this is real feedback is what is your result in the context of all the other folks that are entering the same data? And we're going to be doing this not just in at University of Missouri here in Columbia, but across the other 3 universities as well, doing this at the same time. So the idea is kind of seeding the idea around data collection. What are the issues that we're addressing in our communities? Is it around opioids? Is it around economic development? What are the things we want to collect? We want to do it very simple. We don't want to overwhelm our teams with a lot of data entry, evaluation, monitoring, which researchers tend to get really excited about, but it works against us. So that example we gave you is just one test case with results coming back on maps as responses to questions. Do you want to add anything to that?
Just in this particular case, we picked this topic not only because of the broadband topic, because of the of that particular afternoon we're going to have, but also because of the broader topic of broadband in rural areas, especially, is that the federal government right now does lots of maps saying, hey, everybody has great broadband access, but you talk to people, they don't have this broadband access. And while Missouri was one of the 2 states picked for a more in-depth study over the summer about broadband access, the results of that aren't publicly available just yet. And I think we could really, through a survey like this, shed a lot more light on what is really going on out in the broadband areas. Now, you'll notice on this particular survey, we haven't tied it to the location of your phone. So you can answer about any zip code and county that you wanted to on there. So theoretically, you could put in responses for people or have them put in responses while they're right there at your office or on the phone with you about the broadband, and they wouldn't have to be in that exact location either. They could be describing their home 30 miles away, because they have to come over here to get on the broadband, right? So that's the type of information we want to collect. So that's a location-independent type of survey.
And one other thing about this proof of concept is that you're entering in data within a context of thousands of other data layers. So it's not just about that primary data you're collecting. What is in the context of poverty, access to services, or whatever the issue is that we're trying to get primary data around? That's really important.
And I think the really interesting thing with talking about broadband quality is, overlaying that with these, FCC maps that show where broadband is technically available. Well, that doesn't speak to that quality piece. So that's, one of the pieces that are data layers that we have in our system now that this layer can immediately in real time be overlaid on top of.
Thank you. What is the value add of extension related to all these different issues that we're addressing? Having that secondary data, but a workforce and a capacity to put in primary data. So that's a very important thing. And Jamie and Sam at the back is our other trainer. This is just entering in your zip code and counting. But as we start rolling this out, there's going to be an interactive mapping piece. Again, It's training with the appropriate supports in place, so we're not just throwing stuff. It's being able to zoom into any area down to a building level and being able to put a point on top of that. So we're going to be much more accurate in terms of the geolocation of what we want to get at. So just be aware of that. Right now, it's just zip code and county, but with the appropriate training, this same app can be used in really innovative ways. And we really look to you all and the folks on the phone is what other ways could this app be used beyond the broadband, but when we go back to our regions and what we're thinking about, how that can be used with all the other stuff. So that's, any questions or comments about that?
Yeah.
Does that pretty make sense, or pushback or thoughts around that?
Just specifically about broadband, and again, when I saw that, I was thinking, this is different. There is a tool that I've seen, I haven't used yet, where you can actually go to a specific place. Actually, so you guys are aware of that, right? Where you can actually, so that's not the same thing.
It's not testing your broadband speed, for example, right?
That's mainly testing like how gets my phone to get this location, but that's not always the same thing as what you've got at home.
And so part of what I'm wondering, I guess, so what I'm seeing is 3 different pieces of information coming together, which is FCC maps, which say everything's great. Our entry here, which says this, no, it's not. And then the third piece, which is actually the geolocations, which actually has actual, what is a speed test? So is that something that you're?
Well, that type of thing, crossing across multiple data sets is exactly what All Things Missouri is designed for. And all those components can be visualized within both the mapping tools in All Things Missouri and within reporting tools if you want to generate that out. Now, we don't have a report specifically with those components in it right now, but that's something that that could be put down to do. How's that? Thanks.
I think politically that's the thing that, again, because I think the politicians are throwing, and again, everybody says FCC maps are not accurate, that we need to get to the next stage.
And again, it's the value that Extension brings across the state and also Extension partners. If it's around health, what do public health departments help provide data on? Or United Ways or YMCA. So it's a partnership data collection approach that can really tell that better story about people in place. So other questions or thoughts about the mobile app or ideas based on what we just ripped on?
I like the idea, and I think it could be, I can see a lot of uses for it. I do worry slightly in part of this work that I'm doing on some other stuff right now about making sure that as we're collecting data that there's a valid sample to that data, and that people don't say, hey, I've got this survey that shows broadband's really terrible in Boone County. It's like, no, okay, like, let's, so having some sort of way to ensure that we are talking about samples, we're talking about the rigor of that sample, because that's also what Extension adds, right? It's not just collecting the data, but it's, hey, this is actually good data. It's going to tell us something meaningful too.
So there's two parts to that. One is we view this just as a test for the site. We don't want to use this as we got away from really getting into Jamie, but we thought about broadband speeds, and we didn't want to get into that mix there. The second thing is around the quality of the data, is that's what training is going to be for, is to ensure that the consistency of data entry and all that is in place.
It's that, and part of the second phase of All Things Missouri too is to come up with sort of a data governance strategy. So if you were to go out and collect a bunch of data, how valid is it, and what do we base that validity on? And is it just for your internal use versus something that you're going to share out with the rest of Extension to use? So I think that those conversations still need to sort of come to fruition in terms of what our governance strategies are going to be. But part of what's going to inform that is sort of knowing what potentially you guys might be using it for too, so we can make use cases, right? So I think we agree, and it's definitely on our hit list to come up with at least a baseline governance strategy to start with, and then probably build it out and make it a little bit more robust as time goes on.
I just want to point out one thing about the concept here is that we're showing you the tool right now, but as CARES, we're not too likely to go out and start collecting this data without partnering up with somebody in Extension that would guide that data collection process and design the question, the design of the data, things like the quality control. so that we're just presenting this as a tool that's available to you right now that we could help you work on. How's that?
Yeah, it's great. Again, my only concern is people I've seen a lot of people get really excited about tools, and then they start producing information, and that what is the validity of that information?
Okay.
We with other projects and grants, we've had the same questions are asked. The quality of the data, how it's being done, so the metadata tied to it is going to be key. One other thing is that we really want to be conservative as we get into this mobile data collection thing. We're not throwing this out to the world. You got to log in with your credentials, the extension, and it can be an internal tool to say, oh, what are we seeing? Is this an environmental scan of conditions around X, Y, or Z? How can we use it as an internal tool based on inputs from the field?
The other thing I'll just add is IRB rules. We're doing it. We have to make sure that we're, Jamie, wherever you are with the conversation too, that's going to have to be a part of the protocol there.
Yeah, and the last time we talked about this at the regional directors meeting, Blake was there, and we talked about getting sort of like a blanket IRB approval of some kind, or just in our general guidelines is we are not collecting individual home addresses, we are not collecting people's names unless they can be de-identified, those kinds of things. So I think, yes, that's very much.
It's much more around human assets too, more population. That's excellent questions.
Probably move on here.
Yeah. Any other two?
I just think it's exciting, the idea of just group sourcing the data, and I think of even like youth program events as great partners in some of the early phases sort of thing.
Yes.
They really involve a variety of audiences.
They can use these a lot better than I can. So.
Think about 4-H and youth training around doing this, around something very targeted, and how that can be used. And there's a lot of 4-H geospatial stuff going on around the country, but is it anchored with all this other contextual data that tells a deeper story? So that's kind of what's exciting about that.
So next slide, Jane. Thank you, guys. One of the other things that we have identified since January that we want to implement within all things Missouri is What's New headquarters. Obviously, we've been doing a number of things, and we have to bring you together in a meeting to let you know what we're doing. That's not right. There's this thing called the internet. We should be able to provide you information about what's going on a live basis. So we've identified the need for a new headquarters, and we've implemented a couple of components of this already. And just either Friday or today, we put the what's new in map data up on the slider bar for the story maps or the starter maps that we already have on the system. So if you scroll all the way to the right on that bar, you'll find the what's new in maps and data. And Jamie, if you click on that, I believe it goes to an example of what we'll be showing in that tool. So here we see, here's data updates that we had recently for things you can have in your map. You see the dates, what we have. There's new power plants within the data set, law enforcement facilities. You can click on the eye on those things and get the description of that. You can click on the little folded map next to the eye and get into the actual interactive map. So you can see that that information displayed right through the what's new. So you can, that's just one of our components. We also have, go back to the presentation.
Sure.
And you can search this, etc. Go to the next slide there. We've also developed a what's new in our reports. So for the folks that want to get in and make your reporting documents, we have what's new there. We'll be adding what's new across several other of the major components of All Things Missouri, as well as a sort of what's new headquarters that will be a landing page where you can come in and see what's happening across all those things at once. So we want to communicate this back out to you, and more importantly, we want to communicate that the university is doing something back out to the public as they come in and see this. So it keeps us looking good and proactive on that. So that will be coming over the next, 3 months, couple months? I'm looking at the back of the room here. Sorry, guys. They're nodding yes, sure, whatever he says. Okay. So at this point, we want to pivot the meeting here a little bit from us just divulging what we've been working on, some mostly behind the scenes for the past few months, to sort of a discussion and feedback from the group in the room here, as well as the group on the phone. Now, we'd originally intended to break out by our impact teams, but we got some teams well represented, some teams less represented here. So, and then a number of people on the phone. So I think, Jamie, if this is possible, we'll have one larger group meeting around the topics we would like to discuss. And how does that work on the phone? Will we turn their speakers and microphones on and let them have feedback too? Or
Yeah, they can turn on their speakers one by one.
and we'll be paying attention to the chats too. So if somebody does have something that they're not getting in edgewise from on the phone, please do the chat and we'll stop and then bring that up too. So a couple of things we want to discuss in this. First off, we want feedback from you on all things Missouri and some of the tools and data that we have there. We also want to know what feedback has been passed along to you from your various constituents that you interact with. So anything that's happened over the past few months that you have to mind, I'll give you some time to think about that you want to convey, you think is either constructive criticism or not so constructive criticism, whatever it is, whatever you want to say, bring that up and we'll discuss that. We also want to know what's going on in your impact area in recent months. Things change all the time. Ryan Mulholland, who couldn't be here, passed along to me, hey, you guys got to do more around him. Big thing right now. So we got nothing in there on him. So we got to work this up with him and get that going. So what's new in your particular impact area is a great topic also to cover. And finally, we're headed into bringing all things Missouri more up into the 21st century here with what we're going to call password protected areas. These are going to be areas that we're targeting for extension folks to allow you to interact more deeply with the tools on the system and the data on the system, to integrate your own information into the system, and to share your information with others in some way that we'll listen to your feedback on today, in some way that helps you to do your job. So those are the, what else did I want to say on that, Angela? Did I skip that? No, okay. Those are the kind of, I guess, those three questions. Feedback, what's new in your area, and then let's talk about these password protected areas. So I plan to turn it over to each one of the 4 impact team leaders at this point, but Jamie, what do we do?
You just facilitate the discussion.
I will just facilitate the discussion.
I do want to clear it up and, stimulate your brain with some cookies and fruit. That's probably a good time to do that too.
Yes. Okay, so let's start in the feedback area. Yeah, let's start in the feedback area. Do you have anything you'd like to convey to the All Things Missouri team about All Things Missouri, or anything that you want to pass along that you've heard from others? People have been using the site, right? Some nods. Some nods, much nods on things.
Thank you, Rob.
In the room here. So a couple of things. The changes that you all have seeing on there, I like, and it's responses to the feedback that's in the business and communities group. I see a couple of things that, and the stories I really like, and thinking through how the stories can look in there. A couple of things I would say is, I think I would like, at least in the business community side, to see more ability for the user to select what they're trying to look at. And that can be over a time range there. That can be also over the dividing up their own region there, maybe comparing, maybe, I don't know, I'm just throwing this out there, like Kirksville or Adair County wants to compare themselves to Nottoway, where Maryville is, and 5 or 6 different counties around the state. So being able to kind of craft their own
peers
regions,
or something like that.
Yeah, craft their own regions, things like that, craft their own timeframes. I'm looking at the change in population for Adair County here, which is great, 1969 to 2016, but 1969, as far as I'm concerned, is ancient history because that's before my birth date. But really, what's happened? I mean that kind of jokingly. Okay. I mean that jokingly, but but maybe I want, maybe I know that in Kirksville something happened in 2005, so I really want to see what's happened in that region from 2005 onward, or maybe I want to go back to 1992 or whatever. I pick that time frame also. So having more user ability to sort of select their tools for comparison would be.
And based on what you know of what's on the site now, so we've kind of highlighted the new story map area. You've got your reports that are, we've had those up for a while. we have our standard maps, what would be the best avenue for folks to be able to kind of do that more customized work. We are still working on what this concept of the build and share report, which would allow, we're hoping quite a bit more flexibility in being able to maybe do that first part of what you said there, kind of compare areas, choose what type of geography you want for your benchmark. Right now, everything's, you pick your report area and your benchmark to the state,
Right.
and then you see the U.S. average in there. So being able to do what you're talking about there, like pick pure counties or a different region or something like that. But that's very much in that like reporting environment container. Is there a different
It feels
tool
like,
or?
from listening to you and thinking about how it would be used in my area, that it is that story maps section. It's kind of like, we want them to start with this story, and then they need to be able to personalize the story for themselves.
I mean, I can give a concrete example. So we met with an economic developer from a town in outstate Missouri a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, something like that. And he shared with us his listing of that he has put together by hand, by himself, of communities that he compares to, that as he's going out and doing economic development work, that he has his list of 20 different communities that, you know, that he's sharing with companies, that here's our peers and we can say that we are better. You know, this is why you should locate here, that sort of stuff. The other thing I'll add is that list is not only Missouri too. And I don't know how that factors into what you all are doing, but his list included Missouri, Kansas, Iowa, Nebraska, and I think actually in Arkansas too. So communities in those states. So
just to that point, one of the great things about All Things Missouri is it's built on a national platform as well. So a number of data sets are national. Now, as we develop more and more state-specific information, there's going to be more data points that will end at that state boundary, depending upon the source of that data. But for the most part, it should work nationally too.
But yeah, I'll say like I had some thoughts about the communities he was selecting as peers. Some of them were, I think, aspirational peers is how I put it. Not good, bad, or indifferent, but letting him be like, okay, I want these 10 counties around the Midwest and get that sort of data would be, from our conversation with him, would be very helpful in terms of our user perspective there.
And then you said something about the type of data that he wants. He wants to be able to restrict to a certain range of years or a certain cherry-picked set of data points that makes him look better, something like that.
I mean, he is in the job of selling his community to businesses, right? And so, and again, it's all stuff that he's pulling right now from Census Bureau, from Fred, from reports from regional economic development groups, things like that, to help talk about the community that he has there. So that's how, again, and that's a very specific space. If you're trying to reach people, that's one way that they would be using that data there. So.
And Terry, you mentioned the entry point to that might be through something like a story map or one of those avenues that they would kind of get the picture of what could happen, and then they could dive in and do it for their particular community. Right.
Yeah, so thinking about those two different approaches, the story maps right now, and the way that we're building them require us to know exactly what story or what question you're trying to answer, or what application you're trying to build kind of beforehand. But that would allow you to be more flexible with what the output is. So being able to dynamically choose those ranges, dynamically choose your counties. With the reporting environment, I think there's a lot more customization in terms of what data points you're picking, but a little bit less in terms of that comparison and flexibility of picking those ranges. So kind of the limitations of what we're working with now. Change. I think, especially for story maps, there may be more flexibility there.
Yeah.
So that's great feedback. Any other feedback that you have or that you've encountered?
I was talking, I think, like within our organization, we see a lot of people using it at a surface level, but I don't think there's really a lot of deep diving going on, and maybe even a training opportunity to be had there within types of things that you might be looking for. Here's some strategies.
Yeah, that's very true. And one of the things we are developing over the course of this phase 2 is the training tools. We mentioned one here about how to do a community assessment, but we've got a couple in place. Jane, you should talk about it.
No, it's okay. I think if you wouldn't mind telling us sort of what would be maybe that typical deeper dive because I have done many trainings where I've tailored the training content to a specific topic area, right? So, we can definitely build that for you, build a training like that and come out and do it, or offer it sort of extension wide, depending on, how big you think the audience is. The other option too is that, if there is an opportunity to do a hands-on training, that always gets people asking more questions, getting more familiar with the tools. So if that is something too that we could piggyback on another meeting that you guys are all going to be at already, or those types of things where everyone's going to already be on campus or something, let us know, because we're happy to do that as well. So, and those hands-on trainings typically go over pretty well, and we can do them in, an hour and a half block of time, or we can extend it to a 3-hour block of time, really depending on sort of what you identify as the need. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Another thing to recognize on that is to know that a lot of people maybe don't need the deeper dive. They're just coming in to find out one piece of information or say, oh, that's neat. That's kind of what the audience that story maps and even to some extent the reporting tools are directed at is people that want that easy button. They want to come in, grab something quick, and or understand a topic in a superficial sort of way, and then there would be a smaller audience that goes into that deeper dive. Does that make sense? Did I said that right? Yeah.
I was thinking one thing about the training, that it would be nice if there was recorded training on like each of the 4 areas, so that as people in those areas are watching like a non-live training, we're seeing the data that we are familiar with.
Yep. And we just hired Sam, who's become a video editing expert in 6 days or so. So we are going to be producing a series of videos, but I think that's good to sort of focus on the 4 topic areas. That's not something we had thought about before. So thank you.
Yeah, and there's not currently, I don't think, a support resources page on All Things Missouri, but as we add these record trainings, we're also going to be building, handouts, whether that's a printed handout worksheet or, here's how to make a map, here's how to use this mapping tool, here's how to use this reporting tool, that will be added incrementally as they're built. And then hopefully as we have this what's new overarching headquarters page, that'll be a piece that's embedded there as well. So
what's new in training?
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly.
Sam's in charge.
I'll say I like in training, like one of the things that we are putting together in business communities for our CED, CESs, but more broadly for anybody coming in is trying to develop a site that will allow them to have kind of an overview. So as people change, as folks retire, as they move on, whatever, that we have a spot where a lot of this is captured and just, hey, you want to learn, so it would be a great, you want to learn about all things. Here you go.
Are you doing that all through Canvas?
We are right now.
Okay. We'll have to learn how to use that.
Have we had any comments through chat from the folks online, Jamie?
I don't see anybody, but I told them to unmute themselves if they wanted to talk. So now's your chance.
I want to pivot a little bit to what's new, what's recent in your particular impact area, or maybe broader than your impact area in your job at Extension that could be reflected through All Things Missouri that we could be doing a better job of supporting you in this new area. So what's been happening lately, guys? Anything exciting?
So in youth and families, I would say college and career readiness and entrepreneurship are 2 areas that our after school network, and I would say we get a funding source. It's a joint partnership with 4-H and the after school network on entrepreneurship. So I don't know exactly what data yet is there, but I'm imagining that DESE might have some data on what type of things are going, which community colleges are having career awareness fairs, some of the programs that are available to high school youth related to apprenticeships. There's a new thing out of the Chamber of Commerce on internships and apprenticeships. So there might be things in those areas. So we're just dipping our toe into this, but I would say it's a new area
Well, and on a lot of this new stuff, even if there's not data, we can start building data structures to handle that, or in anticipation of a data release, and put things down to know, hey, check for it in November, you know, or something like that. So that's great. Anybody else working on any things? John, you're smiling.
This one's way out there asking you guys to help, but again, it's something. So I'm in Lynn, State Tech. So one of the things I'm trying to do with State Tech is work with them on their alumni. Since their alumni basically have trade skills, have skills where they could possibly start their own business. So with entrepreneurship, kind of try to get something with them thinking about 5-10 years down the line, having contact with their alumni, say, you know, you've been out there for 10 years now. If you enjoy working where you're at, that's great. But you have the skills that you could probably start your own business. If you're interested in doing that, then if they respond yes, then we can come back with SBA and ACs and whatever. So one of the things that was with that would then be looking at startup funding. And so actually I'm trying to work with our regional planning commission. So when you said you added RCs, so again, I don't know if that would be something that, again, I don't have the time to do it, but again, it would be interesting to see if our Merrimack Regional Planning Commission does have kind of a gap financing for entrepreneurs that is different than what comes through the normal way. Part of this project, again, that would be a statewide perspective. I've got 3 counties, you know, with labor and workforce development, this would be something that maybe would be something to look at in a larger perspective or whatever. But again, looking at where those funding places are across the state that go beyond what SBA. I don't know if you can find that, how easy that be on RPC sites or, I don't know. Again, I just happen to know that what I work with has that.
Right. And there's a couple of different ways that something like this could be manifested through All Things Missouri. First off, you're talking about, yeah, can we find some data to support that? That could be put into the reporting tools and the mapping tools and so on. But then you recall I talked about the 4 new resource area pages. That could be a branch off of one of those pages to start just pointing to not just information, but contacts and articles and so on that particular topic, and you could have this be an information hub then that you could point people to, that they could maybe contribute more ideas to that could grow over time on something like that. So you can start to leverage what we're going to be doing with those resource area pages on something like that. Again, that's going to be coming out over the fall here. Is that anything to add to that, guys?
I'll try to run something around past you guys. Tell me how it might.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great.
Yeah, that's great. So I mentioned in the ag area, I met with Ryan Mulholland last week, who couldn't be here today, and he said that yes, the whole area around hemp is one of his what's news for what's going on in the ag and environment area. And I had to admit to him, well, we really didn't have any information on that. He said, I can provide you a few things. And that's one of the other things we're looking for here today is if you do have a what's new topic and you're already working with that data, we'd like to have it integrated. Right now, the avenue is you need to provide it to CARES, and we could work with you to integrate that information, either into just the general mapping and reporting tools, potential for a story map on that, or potential to impact the 4 resource area pages for your various impact groups. So there's a number of ways that information can be highlighted a little bit better within All Things Missouri on this. So does that give you guys any thoughts about what's new?
Joe Horner.
Joe Horner? About what?
As a resource, Joe is.
Oh, I know Joe. Yeah.
Joe is coordinating a lot of the research that's going on campus.
Okay. Okay.
So if you want to
probably reach out to him too. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I didn't know that.
I would agree. It's an issue for positive issue.
Yeah.
Positive opportunity.
So, yes.
I just want to say I appreciate all the additions and layers that you've added since this site started like a year and a half ago. It's been helpful and I've been using it more. Particularly in the earlier slide I saw where you added that falls reported by hospitalizations over. I think that's a great addition. I'm going to explore that a little bit more. Number one in hospitalizations reported due to falling. If anybody didn't know that, campus folks just told us that. So that's a big deal for us and for Steve and others on campus who just received a big 3-year $500,000 grant to address falls. That data would have been great. I'm sure they would have loved to have that information when they were applying for their grant. It didn't matter because we got it anyway. But things like that, I think, make a big difference going forward as you apply for more statewide. That was a big federal grant that you received. I think that's great. So data, just a small addition that can make a big difference to our work because now we're doing lots of falls related research and programs out in the county. So that's a great addition. And then the other, I see that last bullet there, potential area for specializations. I'm not sure if we talked about this yet. What does that mean? Site selection tool for nutrition outreach? Is that?
So that was an idea that came out of so last year we did the impact teams, and so one of the specialized tools that was talked about for the health and safety area, right? The health and safety, was that in order to get a new site for the nutrition outreach education, the site has to meet a certain criteria. And so what we thought was, are there ways that we can come up with sort of a site selection tool, right? Does it meet the criteria, and where are all the other nutrition education sites? And so that's something that we have sort of in phase 2 is something to explore building out. And we use that as an example of something that would be available to only those folks working in nutrition, not necessarily all across extension, right? So if there would be a specialized tool that you guys would want to build around falls or something else, that's something we could explore.
That's kind of what I thought you meant, but I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Great idea. There's so many sites out there that we don't realize that are high need sites that really need to be added to that site list, as we call it, for our family nutrition program, that I think folks on campus or our administrators don't know about that we know about because we work in those communities. So how can, instead of doing the hard work of finding those sites and then we have to report it to campus, there's a selection process, they have to approve that site, it's kind of a long deal. So
right. So something kind of related along those lines, I think talking about college and career readiness, we had identified or communicated with someone for All Things Missouri, a data set that prioritized a number of indicators, I think at the school district level, so it was DESI data on like enrollment, the percentage of students who scored college or career ready or had certain ACT scores, and then poverty levels, and created some kind of ranking or prioritization at the school district level, so to help programming focus efforts, et cetera. So if there are similar things where, if it's a prioritization of areas based on need or vulnerable populations, and there are existing sites, those are the types of things that I think we have the capacity to kind of easily roll out, as long as we can identify what the what the function is, what the data sources are, and then it could either be, as Jamie was mentioning, a private password protected tool or just a map layer with an index score or something like that, just to help folks make those decisions and make it more accessible.
Yeah. We're working with the National Community Action Partnership, and one of the things that we've just been talking to them about is they're doing census outreach. So how do we overlay sort of the folks that were hard to count, during the last census, different demographic populations, voter participation and census participation from the last census, really help them start to target right where they should go. So those are just some ideas about, are there other programs that you guys are doing where we could look at some intersections of those types of demographics or data points, that would help you have a bigger impact, right? So,
I know that Extension had been involved in the last census, and I don't know if Extension is involved in this census this next year, but it just as you said that, I know there's some kind of extension engagement there. And that's something to follow up internally. And is anyone aware of that or not?
down in Springfield area, Pam, who's the county engagement specialist down in Springfield area, is actually a recent conversation. She's very much involved.
Okay. Okay. Would it be really good for our extension colleagues to be aware of these national data sets as it relates then back to Missouri and what we build out?
Of course, with more of a minority population stuff, I think that's part of what she was engaged.
And one thing with, as we talk about tools and potential tools down the road, this is our first iteration of building out All Things Missouri. As I mentioned at the beginning, we had to get it up and running. This will likely not change as we introduce these tools next year, as more people are saying, hey, can I do this in another impact area? So this is all going to continue to evolve in terms of the tools and functions.
And just so you guys know, Sarah Lowe did say that there's a handful of CED, CESs who are involved in the census stuff. So, yep. And then we had an idea from John Fuller, who said information on adults that are tending to children outside of their immediate home, such as grandparents raising grandchildren. So that's another example of potential. Yeah.
So Chris, can I give you guys a homework assignment for me this week? I've got something to do on Saturday.
All right.
So again, it doesn't have to be done this week. So on Saturday, I'm going to be in Chamois, 400 people. I have in Chamois Day. Everybody, alumni come back. So what I'm doing is I'm sitting there trying to encourage their alumni about thinking about coming back or how they could invest back in the community. So I've got a list of about 10, 12 different items. And as you were going through that, I started to talk about this. Why am I not using your data? Because so the daycares, I was going through the other, so I'm looking for daycare part. Housing was another one. So health issues, there's a number of issues. So again, if you were going to try to relocate back to the community, what would you want to learn about? And so that's the kind of data I was trying to collect for Chamois, Osage County, Jeff City region. And so that when they come there, I could say, well, if you're interested, we're trying to create an alumni association. So there's some related things. But again, I'm going to take a quick look at, look at it with your overlay and start to see why wasn't I using that to begin with. But if you don't mind, can I send one of you kind of the questionnaire and show which ones I've identified? And you can tell me if I've got a gap.
Be the team leader.
Sure.
Exchange for
Yes. If you bring me popcorn, it's a deal.
It's not open yet.
Side conversation. There's great popcorn and Lynn coming. So
that'll be my promise.
Yeah.
If you look at Jamie, I'll choose
Sure.
first.
Done.
One of the other areas, when I met with Ryan, he had some other good topics and ideas, and I just brought another one to mind here is he says he has a live market feed that he gets into for commodities that will change every day. And he said, something like that would be great to expose through All Things Missouri. And as you saw in the example earlier, we had the live stream gauge heights. It would show we can tie into a lot of these live data feeds that you may be using in other ways and bring them together so that it's integrated into the larger perspective from a data standpoint. So that's something else to keep in mind, a little more techie geeky there, but something else to keep in mind is if you start to come across these things and you think, hey, I'm using this in this way, would others like to see this? It can be integrated into something like this too. So did we have any more feedback from folks on the phone?
No, we don't.
I want to pivot into our next area here.
Do you think we could take a break and then come back?
Okay, that might be a good idea for folks in the room, folks on the phone. Let's take, what, a 10-minute break?
Let's do 10 minutes. It's 2:23, so we'll
Okay,
come back
we
at
come back, we
2:33.
got this whole area to talk about, and then we'll get going. We may actually end up a half hour or so early today. I'm not going to promise you guys anything, but depends on how much you talk. Actually, I shouldn't say that. You talk. But let's take 10 minutes here. There's plenty of snacks and juice at the back of the room. Again, restrooms across the hall. And looking forward to this discussion right here after the break.
I was wandering actually. I got here and then
I feel like we haven't talked to you guys much since December. Next area I want to talk a little bit about, and for the folks on the phone, welcome back. One of the big areas we want to get into and that we kind of promised you guys back in the fall is sort of what we're calling generically a password protected area. These are areas that we think that we want to set up to give you several different types of opportunities within All Things Missouri. So you can do things like we point out here, save and share maps and reports to a personal directory. That you could do content sharing to targeted groups of people that would come in and have a password protected access to an area. That you could do your own data upload and integration to the system and help feed the information that's available to folks through All Things Missouri, or maybe just to a working group that you have identified within All Things Missouri. And then again, having specialized access to specialized tools. Say you've got a project going on, or a specific study, or a working group that you're doing with members of the legislature or something, and there's a particular tool or data set developed for that effort, that can be exposed to just members of that group. So a couple of things we need feedback on in this process is, first off, are we thinking of the universe of types of things that we would want to do in that type of area where you would have a login and could do specialized types of things? And second off, are we thinking through the process very well of how that information or tools or something, how that would be shared out and who it would be shared to, and just what is the target audience of this type of approach with this? And a little bit on a technical side here, we are doing this with full integration with Nexus and paw prints and all of this. So it's been a little slower to roll out than we had hoped on this, but we are well down the path on this now, getting several things figured out. I'm looking at the folks in the back of the room again still. Getting several things figured out and working closely with Kyle's team and the university credentialing team on this to help identify, first off, things like who's an extension and who isn't, and several of the other things about how we mechanically set up what we're talking about. So feedback, thoughts on any of those questions or topics I brought up. Terry, you have your hand way up in the air already. Jump right in there.
So are you, and I remember our group at least had questions about this, so I'm not clear. Are you talking about only people who are in university with a paw print having access, or would the circle be broader that partners outside of Missouri.edu, system.edu could also?
Here's the thing, the technology makes it possible to do that. It's going to be easier to do with a smaller group, but we want feedback on you to help guide us to where we should be focusing on that. Do you have needs for folks outside the university,
such as funders?
Funders, those are good. Legislators, commissioners, etc.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. They want to see the details of our work and help us influence the policies that then result from the data.
Okay, so a good need for not just campus paw prints, but maybe some mechanism for providing protected access to people who are outside of the .edu or Missouri.edu sphere, right? Okay.
I think that's very helpful. As we've heard from Marshall and others around, do what we do best, but partner with the rest. And that's the other anchor institutions. How do we provide that closed space around data collection or other ways of looking at the resources?
So that's a great guide on how we should implement this. I want to bring it back around to what we should do and who we should do it for, that type of thing. What would you use something like that for? What do you think you might use something like that for?
I know, Catherine and Chiquita, you've had lots of ideas, so it might be helpful to kind of share your thoughts maybe on protected areas with the group, and seems like if other folks have similar needs.
Well, the thing that comes to my mind is the stakeholder engagement that we've done down in Ripley County, and having stakeholders for the community on a common platform where we can communicate easily, share resources, share data. So that kind of, I think, spurred our conversations.
Also taking it a step further, and for those smaller communities, what we found is doing that in community engagement work is that several of the people who are in the room didn't know about the resources that were available to them within that small community. Is there a way that we could use some sort of system or asset mapping?
Or asset sharing, basically to share, hey, we've got these assets.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know.
So thinking about that in terms of the build, so we've talked about having logins through Nexus, ideally, or are we accommodating both? Well, anyway,
We have to do that
extension
somehow.
personnel logins, external logins, individual sharing access, and it sounds like we would need have a need for sharing across groups that are set up, even kind of subgroups of these impact areas, or that may span across impact areas if we're working with economic development kind of more holistically. So what are like kind of the groups and sharing needs that we would envision if we're talking about these credentialed areas?
I'm sorry, but I have this huge thought about us as a new program area, community health from a broader perspective, looking and addressing issues across our state, social determinants of those different economic issues, employment, lack of access to health care, some of those things, if there were a place where you could look at our different communities, like what makes up a healthy community? Can you go to a place and look to see what is making it healthy versus what is not making it so healthy? That's one of the ideas or
And see, something like that on a project basis or a program basis, you could explore that information in that sort of private, protected area arena until you become more certain about what to say about that data or what that data is saying about the communities. And then you can turn around and expose that information to the broader public through the All Things Missouri, the mapping tools report, something like a story map. But the first stage here with the password protected areas gives you the playground to better understand or to get the feedback from a small group on a particular topic before it goes out to the larger area. And that's one of the functions we're thinking that the password protected areas will serve is to let folks think a little bit more about what's going on, explore this, discuss, etc. on this. Terry, you had something?
I'd like to see the password protected area be able to have data layers that are not publicly available.
Right. Okay. Do you have some examples, or can you not say it?
So in the actual world, this area I'm thinking for me and my funders to go to where we see the quality data about the after school programs and can look at probably have 40 variables of quality that we would have, and be able to look at those to kind of analyze the needs of the programs kind of geographically, since we have to deliver services geographically to them. And so that would be data that would not be appropriate to be publicly available, but very helpful for program design and program implementation.
See, that's an excellent example, and you can integrate that with data update through either the mobile tool or surveys on your laptop or desktop, or data entry platforms that data would always be tied to and refreshed on something like that. So you have today's data or last week's data, whatever.
Yeah, I got a couple ideas for using that one too.
Okay.
The app.
I think that, but it provides that protected area. Yes, Chris?
I think it's really important as we think about All Things Missouri. What is internal to Extension? I use that word value add for Extension field faculty. And what they bring to the table in their counties and their communities, that is in the form of data, also reporting systems. There's also types of different tools that we've developed over the years at CARES. What can be an internal tool that Extension can use that differentiates it? We just don't want to throw everything to the wind, because some things first aren't appropriate to the data and mapping like you were speaking to, but also some tools, economic development tools or other types of resources that we have proper to Extension.
The other thing that a password protected area tied to that a password protected area can help set up, and I know we mentioned this to some of the impact groups in the fall, is that if you are offering some sort of training opportunity where maybe there's a fee to attend for some reason or something like that, because this is integrated with Nexus and can collect the fees and assign, you can set up the passwords and things like that. You can set something up through that you would have access to tools for the class and for 6 months after the class or something like that, this password protected area would enable that type of function. So you can almost look at it as a component of your revenue generation for your various programs as well. So that's one of the things that password protected area helps enable.
And so I think right now we're also talking about a lot of this content, the password protected content, being potentially filtered through those impact team specific landing pages, at least some of it, but there may be other needs. Again, we're talking about projects that maybe span across impact areas or departments or functional units. So we need to think through how that works. Within the system, kind of on the back end, we have it's a tagging system. So I guess something can be tagged in multiple landing pages. But does that make sense to kind of go through your impact team page? Would you rather see it in a personal profile type thing? What makes the most sense from a user perspective? We don't have these tools yet, so it's a little hard to think about, but
So in your example of going through the impact teams, you would still be able to have your group be more individual and exclusive than your whole impact?
right. I think that's what we're thinking. Would it make sense to pull back up the landing page mock-up? I know it's still very much in
Yeah, I
flux.
can. I think a couple of things that we have to keep in mind, at least from our past experiences with setting up these kinds of systems and groups, is one, we want to make sure that we aren't segmenting conversations so much that no conversations happen at all, right? So is it possible to have all the conversations that you want to have sort of within that youth and family group, knowing that not everybody's going to access your data, but the people who are working directly with you would, rather than having that sort of exclusivity to to another group where you're sort of bifurcating a conversation that may be able to happen, if that makes sense. And then the other thing that we have to keep in mind too is just recency issues, right? So a lot of the times we have to have sort of a champion, right, that will make sure that things are being updated and posting regularly or adding content regularly. Otherwise, it's going to go dead and no one's going to use it. So I think those are just two things that I sort of want to bring up as things that we've ran into in the past where it hasn't been very successful, right? Because those two things were done. We segmented conversations too much, and we didn't have those champions.
We made it too complicated, frankly. I mean, in past systems, we focus on the technology side. Yeah, we can do it, but should we do it? So that's kind of what should we do in terms of collaboration, in terms of sharing? So this could live out 3, 4, 5 years, because it can quickly get really, really complicated.
Yeah, so in this example here, we just have this, and this is totally still in development or in flux, but there's this that sidebar to the right there, you can, very difficult to see, but those say, I think, workspaces, where the workspaces would potentially be, tagged by that may be like a private public facing front page or something along those
Push back on that from folks doing chats as well.
No chats.
Anybody on the phone want to weigh in?
One of the other things that Terry's idea gets to is the data upload and sharing area here. And one of the things that, you know, we have right now, because CARES is providing that librarian sort of a role at between the data and all things Missouri. We have some good protections on the quality and content of the information. One of the things that we want to do with this password protected area sort of development is to loosen the reins on that a little bit, because right now it's a bottleneck. The CARES between what's on All Things Missouri and what you guys do and know and have access to. We want to open that up theoretically just to extension folks to be able to upload information into the system that could be exposed to the public as well. So if you've got a great data set on, you know, sales of elderberry, you could integrate that information into the system and put that out to the public and say, hey, we're the #1 elderberry state in the nation. So that would be the type of thing that you could do as an extension person. We need to talk to the data management, what was the phrase you guys used before? Governance. Yes, the data governance aspects of something like that. Because certainly we would like any information that somebody uploads to be tied back to that person, to have you be the contact for questions on that data and things like that, and to give the responsibility back to you as the data content provider on something like that. So I've laid out a big concept here. First off, what do people think about the data integration idea? And second off, what do people think about the governance around that? Any thoughts? Anybody saying, hey, this would be great, or don't want to do that, that's a bad idea? What do you think?
Could you upload data that only you could see?
That would be one of the things we hope to be inherent to the password protected systems, that you could upload it and just share it with yourself and then do some things. Say you needed to upload a county data, a spreadsheet, you upload it, you can tie it to the county map, you know, break out some pretty colors, print out your map, and nobody else gets to see it. And you can even delete it then right after you're done with it, something like that. We're hoping would be one of the possible flows of that. So it's always just with you, and may only be on there a few minutes, and that would be the possible way to integrate information. Is that important to you, to have it just be to you?
Yeah, I mean, I could see a case where if you have customer data, let's say, you had zip code level. And so you put in, so you had a program spanning 5 years, and you can show like the growth of it over time, and have a map for each year, but you maybe didn't want to share that with a whole organization. You'd be like, oh, here's everything I'm doing. Right. But if you were reporting back to funders or to administration, that's
yeah, that would. That does bring up some data governance issues, though, because certainly you could start getting into situations where you're wanting to upload information on an individual that may be, or an individual business that may be economic data or something like that, that's sensitive information. And certainly when you start to get information about youth, you have the FERPA issues, or health, you have the HIPAA issues, and we want to be very well aware of those and try to make sure that some of those are even avoided on the system. And it may be that when we expose this to extension people, we may need to have some sort of training involved with that you agree not to do, or to do, you know, support or not do certain practices, whatever, however we want to word that. There should be a positive way to word that, right? So that you would stay in compliance with all the regulations that are out there around protecting individuals, protecting economic data, youth data, health data, etc. So, but yeah, there's a data governance side to that. I can see your case. Yeah.
I think as far as what I'm thinking of data governance, I mean, there's like a threshold for having something public, and there's a different threshold of data and responsibility when you're using it internally. I mean, there's so I would think the university would prefer us to upload our data here, get our map through the system, than to go online and put those same zip codes just on Google Maps or something like
Yeah,
that.
but to get into just a little bit of technical background, they have different data classification levels at the university and what things are exposed. Right now, this is a level 2 server. If you start to get into like FERPA data, we have to change the server to be a level 3 server and go through campus certification on that and so on. So if we're going to do that, we've got to kind of set up a whole separate server to do protected data, particularly if it's going to be uploaded from the internet. But, something that we want to be aware of if that's going to be the type of data that needs to be shared. But you're absolutely right. If it's going to be behind a password protection and potentially behind a technology protection with the classification levels, then you should be able to do things like that.
I just had the same experience where I tried to upload data on mapping sites that are public. And then I just get frustrated because I'm like, I need to save that, and I work for this great system. Like, why can I not use our system? And I understand where you're coming from and why we have the protections and all those things in place, but taking screenshots gets a little frustrating. Static data.
Yeah, and it would be great to be able to upload your data set and save it.
Right.
And share a link to it, an interactive version of it, to that one other person you can share it with. And that's the type of thing that actually we've done in other places. We know how to do that. We just need to think carefully about how to
what can be on there and what cannot be on there.
Right, from a government standpoint. Yeah.
The fact that I've used other resources.
Any other thoughts around what kind of opportunities that might mean to you if you're able to integrate your own information? Would you use that? Would you not want to use that? Are we going down the wrong path here? Is this something we don't need to worry about doing? Or do you think others might use it in an extension, thinking about your teams and your groups that you interact with? Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm so again, like in the world I work in, right there's publicly available data, which is going to be public, and there's not a lot to worry about that. And there's proprietary services like Burning Glass and MZ, and I would suspect that the cost of licensing that to share would be such that it's prohibitive for us to incorporate that. So, yeah, so what I could see using it would be in the context of, hey, working with John, here's some information, sharing it like that. But again, if the system is also set up so that you could easily select your region and kind of do it on the front end, again, for what I'm doing, it might not be as applicable that way. Now, again, like we start getting data, doing data collection through the app system that you were talking about there, and you start getting robust data sets, and you start really kind of focusing in on different areas, then that would be an area of use.
Do you all use Esri's Business Analyst? Is that
I don't use it. We have a subscription to MZ, and we have a subscription to Burning Glass. So Esri's Business Analyst might be used by the business development folks. I can't say that for sure.
Well, I'm wondering about it. We can still retain only certain number of seats with those type of vendors.
Right.
But you're able to link it with all things Missouri as an underpinning, so you have much more value with the other data, but you're not just opening it or violating any of the vendor arrangements there. So that's another area, is if there's a certain number of seats around something, what can be done to link that together so that you retain that?
Okay. Yeah. I know that we've helped some of the CESs get MZ data just to kind of understand what's going on in accounting there, but again, it's limited that you can't, 6 seats or 10 seats or whatever we have available.
Anything online or not?
No.
Okay.
We have MZ Business Analyst subscription, just one seat. Yeah, no Esri, so.
It's kind of a progression. Like, if this is the time to create the capacity, then I would encourage you to do it. In terms of actual use, I think a lot of people are at the beginning phases, maybe get into the middle phases, and then when the demand starts picking up, you have that in your back pocket. Say, well, in response to demand, we do have this. But I think if you were to roll it out immediately, it would probably be.
Okay. Well, and we may stage it in another way too. We mentioned the more protected data and things like that. We might roll it out for more generic type of information. And if there's a special case that we need to have some sort of integration of HIPAA data or something like that, it would have to be maybe a spin-off of this set up special, not something that we would roll right out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think it'd be helpful too for you guys to think about like what training would need to go along with these types of tools, right? Because one thing that you'll hear me say if you spend any time with me is to talk about data literacy, and that's something I've really learned about extension and just university in general is it varies widely, right? And so sort of getting everybody up to that foundational level of understanding data, methodology, collection, those kinds of things is one level. And then actually getting them to use a tool like this to do light analysis or program population identification, whatever, is a whole nother level, right? So even thinking about what are the training steps that would get people there, and then is it going to be valuable for you once they are there, right? So if it's not, then maybe that's the answer, right? But I think, just going out and talking to folks, every extension program collects some kind of data, and a lot of it could be mapped and visualized, and you could use it to write grants, talk to funders, talk to a community about your impact, make a case, for whatever it may be. And so I think that's really where we see the value, the potential value is giving you the access to those tools so you don't have to come to us and make a request for us to do it and have a turnaround time, but instead you guys are sort of empowered and have the capacity to do that yourselves and sort of dream things up, right, of how these tools can be used. But we understand that it's going to take some capacity building in order to get people there. So even thoughts around how we sort of work that into your annual trainings or your annual conferences and whatever capacity building events you already have. And then use cases are always super helpful too. So if you have a potential use case, can we help you build that so you can show other people how powerful or useful it could be in the community? Yeah. It wasn't really a question, it was more of a statement, but yeah, whatever.
Anybody have any other ways that maybe you've used other password protected systems to do your work that could be brought into how you might approach all things Missouri with this type of concept?
You talk about your use of Google Docs.
Yeah, that's the one that came to mind for me too.
In terms of, yeah, we use Google Docs. How's that? In terms of integrating something, certainly document links could be something that would be shared within something within the system. You would be able to upload. It says upload data and data sharing, but you could upload things like links or other documents that could be in the system like this. That's something we have done in the past, and that has the potential for this. So you could use it as a repository of the Google Docs link if you didn't want to use the Google Drive, or your Google Drive's a mess and you just want to share certain things on this particular topic, then that could be something that this could be used for.
I was thinking in terms of Google Docs, like I have a committee work group, and we have a shared folder on that for that committee work group. So I invite people to that, and so those people are the only ones that can see it, even though maybe this is my staff team and then this is my unit. So kind of that permission structure and kind of the limiting of that was what was coming to mind for me on Google Docs. Like this folder should only be these 5 people.
So that's a good model, you're saying, for maybe how you want to approach things within All Things Missouri as well?
Maybe not on the back end, but as far as what I see on the front end. I don't know what their back end's like. Another one that came to mind for me, we have a data system that I work with where there's permissions at the data set level also. So it checks my ID, and then before it will display a data set, make sure that I have permission for that.
That's very much what we're anticipating on this data upload, is that it would first be just to you, and then you could identify either a group or another individual that you share it with, or you had the option to make it entirely public. But it would be tied to your name, or like their name somehow. We got till June to figure this out, right, guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
All the folks back there thinking hard.
It's pulling his hair out, right?
Yeah. No, not about that. We've done it before.
Okay. So
That one's figured. That's no big deal.
In order to work with Nexus?
Well, that assumes that, well, yeah.
No comment.
What else do we have?
So what do we think is the more common use case then? Is it going to be sharing with one, like an individual, one other person, a data set, or is it sharing within a group of people? And what's more technically feasible for our programming team? What do you guys prefer?
Either both are fine.
Both are fine.
Yeah, we have sharing to individuals and to groups.
Yeah.
And I can imagine the use case that was discussed here with, specific case group, which is a subgroup, say it's a health and impact group, and you're working on a particular project, you make a subgroup, and then that would be a great use for a group, because then you could share things to that group and have discussions and be able to work on the same pieces of property. So that makes a lot of sense to me. I don't see any reason to reinvent the sharing wheel, because we all know how sharing works pretty much already.
Yeah.
One of my past slides, we use SharePoint.
Ooh. We're so sorry.
But, it's the concept, it's not the visual or the usability, but something similar where a repository for resources and or documents and or whatever.
Yeah, it's important that we mimic common systems like SharePoint, Box, Google, et cetera, that folks are used to and can understand how they would share things amongst folks. Is that what you're trying to say? Is that model this on those types of approaches?
Yes, but much better.
Well, maybe we should have a follow-up survey to ask people, not in front of everybody else, or what are your biggest pain points with things like Box and Google, so we can know what to avoid, right?
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense to have it set up similar to what you're already using, right? I mean, if you're trying to convince somebody to do this, I think there's probably like a minimum expectations for it. If you go into it and you're like, oh. That'll be a real problem.
And it's important that we don't set up another whole separate system. I want it to be able to integrate links from Box or Google Drive or et cetera. It's important that you be able to have this platform that can get you to those other platforms that you're also using. You should be able to go anywhere from there. Okay.
All right.
Well,
should we move forward?
Yeah, we've got some.
We didn't do any.
Any other comments on any of this before we head off of it? Any other comments on the password protected areas or the what's new or
Well, I'll ask one more question to put you all on the spot again. So I know a lot of what we talked about in terms of building out a custom workspace was around like task management. Could we get a sense of do folks around the room here use different pre-existing like content or task management tools like Asana, what is that? Slack, Trello, Team Gantt,
Monday.
Yeah, are those familiar terms for folks? Is there one that's used more across extension than others?
Is there any one?
We use Asana.
Yeah.
And I've used some of the others as well.
I think the problem is the ITSRQ process. So if you want to pay for something, you got to take it through. I'm actually stuck with something, another product.
We didn't know what that at all.
And so I love Asana. It's great, but I can't go above a certain threshold that I was going to pay, and then the ITSRQ just squelches you.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So we were in just preliminarily evaluating, like, are there ways to integrate any of those softwares within, because we're not trying to reinvent the task management wheel, but it sounds like that may be a need if we're talking about really managing certain aspects even of projects within All Things Missouri, that there may be some need to have deadlines, milestones associated with forums. Yeah, but if that process is a bottleneck, if there's not any system that's approved by the university already, then
Yeah.
I don't know if we
Maybe
can.
the question is, why isn't there? I mean,
Yeah,
I think that's a great question. Like, why am I using a to-do list off Google Docs in order to have a communication tool between three offices? You know?
Yeah.
I guess.
I do know that Asana is approved through some entities within the university, like I know the School of Medicine IT is using it. We got accepted to use the free version, so that's what we're using.
Yeah.
And it meets our needs so far. Rob, you're using another, what is it? I want to say or something. Elementus, whether this kind of stuff with that.
Right now, that's
Similar?
functioning more as a communications tool about resources. So it's not necessarily a task manager, but more about, hey, this is a new report. That sort of stuff.
But if we're able to, you know, identify our group and, you know, work on different projects within that group and eliminate some of the email and have everything located in one place, I think that would be, make us a lot more efficient and be really great.
Yeah, I think we just really need to be careful and evaluate this thoroughly, because we go down the road where we can do some things custom code, but every time we land a new project, the funder may want us to use another thing. And so it's always a moving target when we get into these type of, what is it called, specifically task management things. So I'm not saying we shouldn't, let's just really think about it. What is the most pervasively used tool on campus?
Doesn't sound like there is one.
There's one.
I think it's Google Docs. That's why I asked about how to use Google Docs. Because that's,
Google Doc is great.
that's just the hidden, everyone on campus uses it, but no one's approved.
Right.
That's right.
Neither mine.
So I just want to turn it over to Chris here. We wanted to end the day with a little bit of vision about where we're headed on a few things, and just to let you know where we're going to head over the next 9 minutes here as well. So Chris,
So I'm going to try, but as is mentioned to some people, I've got some allergy, mowing the lawn, haze thing with me today, so I'm not too coherent. I really want to call on different people to help support where we're going. Okay? So the mobile data collection demonstration during the broadband summit, you did a first test case with that. We see a lot of opportunity with that kind of a tool. It's just a matter of living it out. And as Jamie says, building more use cases. And that's going to happen over time. The main thing is starting simple with this. Any questions in terms of that mobile tool thing we did earlier?
Thank you all for participating. You gave us initial data in which we can build our dashboard.
Thanks to Yen Barnett in the back of the room. She's our key technical person in pulling these pieces together. And Mike, I remember years we talked about getting a mobile data collection tool. It's not an easy thing to do. One thing to note, though, with the app itself, you can work offline where you don't have any internet access, no broadband. This tool can not only be used in Missouri, across the United States, and internationally. So I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind, is the scalability and how this tool can be used is just really up to our imaginations.
So one piece of feedback I received that would impact our broadband summit is that it'd be great if that URL was shorter. It's a lot of letters to type in.
It will be engagemo.org, right, Mel? So actually, we're going to be using engagemo.org. We're going to have a little banner there where people can click on that survey. So it will be shorter, engagemo.org. Come on, okay.
Not engage less.
Build and share report. Angela, Jamie, did you want to speak to that a little bit?
I think Angela described it a little bit earlier. So one of the things that came out of the impact team process from last year was just that you guys wanted sort of more customization options. So as you're creating reports on our site, you get to choose sort of what data visualizations come out of that report for which indicators. You also get to pick indicators across different impact areas. So that's sort of where we're headed now. And I think with some of the feedback that you gave earlier, and if anybody else wants to send us feedback, we'll kind of go back and be able to continue to iterate what that's going to look like. And we should have some initial versions of that out in the next 6 months or 9 months or so. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything, Angela, to add to that?
Nope, that's great.
The Grand Challenges report, I know that, David, you're working on that, more of an infographic thing, and I said, don't do that because you've got this other thing that has a higher priority right now, which is down the list of engagement portals. But the idea of the Grand Challenges report is much more of an infographic looking thing. Anyone want to add to that? That'll be available as soon as we
tied
can
around
get
the
it.
challenges that Marshall Stewart identified in last year's summit.
Yeah, education, economy, and health. And stay tuned for that. That will be rolling out when possible. Enhanced, so these two right here, enhanced impact sheets and engagement portals. The first one, enhanced impact sheets, is something CARES has been doing for the past 12 years, which are the district data sheets. I don't know if some people have seen that. It's a 2-page PDF. You can click on any county, any legislative district or congressional district and bring up impact statements about the number of alumni, students, faculty in that county, in that house district.
How the University of Missouri is impacted.
Thank you. It's the University of Missouri system, and it has it broken out for some attributes by campus. So what we did last year, Michael Hart is the key point person on this, is we actually with David Cavins, is really kind of reframing district data sheets so it's much more web-based, so it's a lot more flexible. And so we're set up now to really go to town on creating impact sheets by university. And that leads us into this engagement portal thing. Before I go into engagement portal, anything else on the impact data sheet that you all want to speak to?
This originally started out as a way of communicating how the university was impacting a particular legislator's district. It's a great way of communicating towards your representatives and senators here in the state, and was designed around that. Now we're broadening the impact sheets to have many more uses on how the University of Missouri is impacting your particular locality.
Thank you. That's so much better than
We've been required to have them in our annual reports too.
Yeah.
Annual reports.
So, well, so there's so many variations on the theme. We've got an engagement portal, we've got the impact sheets, there's these different templates that can feed in. Just from an extension standpoint, what is the impact of extension across the state by those different jurisdictions? So stay tuned, that all needs to be sorted out. So the next thing is the engagement portals. What we've had for the past year and so many months is the MU, engagements.missouri.edu website, where it really lists all these different engagements at the University of Missouri in Columbia. So when you click on a legislative district, et cetera, it'll bring in engagements around ag and environment, other ones around health and safety, et cetera. So it was a good first start. And in keeping with Marshall's good tradition of, by the way, you have a month to build it type thing, that's what we did. We built the team built the engagement portal the first round. We learned a lot from that process. We learned also that the other universities wanted to have a similar kind of website. So what we've been doing over the past several months, and now serving as a key point person on this, is just listening to the leadership at each university on what they want to see with an engagement portal. And we learned a whole lot. We learned far more than we thought we would, and we were scared. Mainly because faculty and leadership are saying, we do not need more websites. We don't need yet another place to send people to get this resource or that resource. And you're already seeing, just with CARES alone, we've got the engagement portal, we've got the impact sheet, we've got all things Missouri, we've got da-da-da-da-da. We need to be smarter about how we align these resources. We need to be smarter about how we scrape, how we search across different websites, and pull together content that's related to engagement. We also learned through this engagement process is that there's a huge need internal to the university. Forget the external audiences, which is what the engagement portal is really about. The external audiences being the legislators, county commissioners, mom and dad. What we learned through this last 6 months is that there are many faculty that just don't even know what each other's doing. We've heard that before. Yeah, time and again, we hear across not just our own campus, but some incredible work going on at S&T, UMSL, and UMKC. No idea about what great work is going on. So how do we help better align faculty and staff around different affinity areas, around broadband, around rural engagement, around X, Y, and Z? So that there's a real need, and it's a collaborative management type thing that we've all got to think through. But that's going to take a lot of work. So with this engagement portal, we're going to be launching an initial iteration the week of October 21st. It's also our Extension Summit week. But we're also going to have a presence, and CARES team is going to be on each campus around All Things Missouri is one thing, and then this other part, the engagement portal, is going to be introduced that same week as well. And I'm going to pause here on the engagement portal. Melissa, did you have anything to add to what I said? Okay, even with this haze I'm facing right now, this is okay. Okay. Data builder and data upload tools. I think we covered that pretty well.
I think we covered it pretty well. Yeah.
In the previous conversation. Online and in-person training calendar.
Straightforward. That's what it is.
Oh, speaking of that, one of the things we heard from a lot of the universities, or every university, is we don't just care about what engagements we've done in the past, retrospective. We need to know what are the future upcoming events going on? What are the summer camps? What does mom and dad or try to find for their son or daughter around STEM, the STEM camp, etc. So this whole opportunity around calendaring across all these colleges, all these universities, and having something that's coherent so people can get the information they need. Right now, we're all lost. We're really lost in terms of the types of information we need to be thinking through. That word calendar just kind of popped a little thing in there. Field data collection. Again, Chris?
Kind of the same thing, yeah.
But just to underscore. This is going to be I really think this is going to be a differential. Not just for what we're doing in Extension, but the work we're doing at CARES with a lot of other external funders that we work with, and Extension around the country. If we get this right, and if we do a good job thinking through the use cases, this is something that can clearly be scaled nationally. In part because CARES has a national website as well, engagementnetwork.org. I don't know if you mentioned that or not. So All Things Missouri is one hub that stands on top of a national infrastructure that we have. And so the engagementnetwork.org is the site where we can take what we learn in Missouri and scale it to other states. And it's been the modus operandi at CARES to do just that for many projects. With the Community Action Agency in Missouri, we scaled it to other states. With health systems, again, scaling. We can do the same thing from an extension standpoint, really thinking through how we marry high tech with high touch and the issues we're addressing. So that's kind of, there's a lot to stay tuned for over the, after the summit. Just wanted to underscore that because our deck is full, right, before the summit. I've been told to say that time and again. But this is, again, it's going to continue to iterate. We're going to keep improving as we really, to your point about, there'll be some people that use it. A lot of people won't because they're just trying to get their head around what they're supposed to be doing. The county engagement specialist. As we begin to norm folks around what the opportunities are, this is a multi-year endeavor. And it's only going to be as good is a good thinking you guys bring to the picture. We're just context experts. Who cares? We're techies. We deal with the context. We're really leaning on the content experts in the field to help improve what we're doing. So with that, any other, Chris?
No. Any thoughts on this?
Any thoughts about
Thumbs up?
where we're going?
Thumbs up? Got one thumbs up.
All right, that too? Okay, good. Okay, we got it.
And here's your communications with us as well.
Notice the one.
I wasn't involved in all putting this presentation together, which is why they added this. And by the way, we would seriously like to hear any good stories you have. As we're hearing anecdotally, maybe you get stories about how different people are using All Things Missouri. Please do share that, because that has major implications in terms of how we can follow up on that and share that with folks. So I just wanted to double down on that.
And I just want to raise a couple of things here. First off, thank you for your time today and your thoughts today on this. And please use these emails to send us further thoughts as you have them over the coming days and weeks on how we might improve things in All Missouri, All Things Missouri, or just any other ideas that you have on things. We want to be a resource here for you on some of this.
If there's any data, so you've got the links to the news pages. If there's any data that's still missing, that's high on your priority list. If there are those tools or use cases that we've kind of touched on, talked about, future ideas, something that pops into your head for the password protected areas, please let us know.
And thank you for all of you online today. I know it's really difficult to hear most of it, but we're going to have follow-up. We're going to have this recording, and we're going to have what else to what you just said.
Yeah, we'll send a follow-up email with links to the recording and some of those kind of homework or tasks to keep you thinking after we break as well.
Jamie, any other comments from the online folks?
Nope.
Okay.
I just said thanks for joining.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
Thank you
We'll
all.
give you back a half an hour of your day on this, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.